Mesele Ekonomi'den herkese merhaba. Amerika'da Biden döneminin başlamasıyla beraber Amerikan dış politikasında neler değişecek? Bunlar Türkiye'yi nasıl etkileyecek? Amerika-Türkiye ilişkileri nasıl bir raya oturacak? Bunları anlamaya çalışıyoruz. Bugün Amerikan eski Dışişleri Bakan Yardımcısı Bryza ile yapmış olduğumuz söyleşinin ilk bölümünü yayınlıyoruz. Bu ilk bölümünde Biden döneminde Amerikan dış politikasının önceliklerini konuşuyoruz. Mr. Bryza, last time we talked, we were discussing about what America first meant. From that point on, a lot has happened, both in terms of issues and in terms of how the U.S. conducts foreign policy. Now, Biden is taking office, and we know Mr. Joe Biden. We know most of the foreign policy officials that are holding position. So I want to ask you, what will the foreign policy look like during this term? What are the priorities going to be?
Sure. The number one priority of Biden's foreign policy will be to fight the global COVID-19 pandemic together. That's his top priority inside the United States and outside the United States. And just the way I phrase that suggests a big change from the Trump administration. With the Biden administration, it's not going to be an America's first foreign policy. The idea is going to be to work with America's allies and friends around the world, especially with our European allies in NATO, and also in the Far East in Asia, meaning Japan, Australia, New Zealand, all of our friends, Philippines, in the Far East. And we also have already seen him just a few hours after the inauguration. He declared, one, that the United States is going to participate in the COVAX program to try to make sure everybody around the world gets the vaccinations against COVID-19 that they need. And number two, he reconstituted a White House office at the National Security Council, where I used to work. I mean, I didn't work in this office, but at the National Security Council, an office that will coordinate U.S. government cooperation with countries around the world to fight COVID-19. And so I've already talked about another big change in the way President Biden's foreign policy will be conducted. Whereas President Trump was transactional. He wanted to have one-off negotiations with a single country to try to reach a deal, sort of like a real estate deal in New York, which is how he made his money and lost so much money, rather than be involved in multilateral diplomacy where he believed that the U.S. Would be weighed down by other countries' interests, and where the U.S. couldn't bring to bear its massive amount of power, or at least couldn't maximize the use of its power if it's constrained by an alliance. For Biden, it's going to be completely different, as I said. Biden is going to want to work together with our allies. So one example, and I'll stop at this point, one clear example will be China. I think Biden is going to be as tough on China as Trump was. China has changed its behavior from the U.S. perspective in a very negative way since Barack Obama was elected in 2008 and since Barack Obama left office in 2016. But Biden is not going to do what President Trump did, which is try to fight a trade war against China at the same time as fighting essentially a trade war against the U.S.'s NATO allies, including Turkey, with sanctions and tough rhetoric. Instead, I think Biden will first reunify the transatlantic community as much as possible, and then turn toward tackling China on trade and violation of intellectual property rights, stealing of technologies, etc.
What will we see during the Biden era in terms of U.S. leadership?
Well, I actually thought Obama's foreign policy was pretty traditional. I just didn't agree with many elements of it, like partnering with the YPG in Syria, or like having a Russia reset policy, which was essentially a Russia first policy. And I thought that the Obama administration didn't pay enough attention to keeping our alliance strong within NATO. I mean, I think he pivoted, or he said rebalanced toward Asia, which was necessary, but I think it should have been more attention simultaneously paid to Europe. So I think a Biden foreign policy will be much more along the lines of what I described. It'll be much more traditional, alliance-based, and one that values and strengthens the rules of international behavior that the U.S. wrote, essentially helped write at the end of World War II with the Bretton Woods institutions or the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, as well as United Nations and NATO and all of these sets of rules and ways to cooperate with each other that in the international trade system with the World Trade Organization, rules that allow countries to come to trust each other even as they compete. And Donald Trump, in sharp contrast, was trying to dismantle those rules. He had basically maneuvered the World Trade Organization into a point where it couldn't really function anymore because it wasn't. The U.S. was blocking judges at its the WTO court. Function. Trump was an opponent of the European Union, and he questioned whether or not NATO really had any more utility. Biden will be the opposite on all those policies. I think Biden will also be much tougher on Vladimir Putin. He won't seek some sort of a strange friendship with Putin that Trump thought he had. I think also Biden will not be positive toward or personalize U.S. relations with China or North Korea as Trump did. I think we will see Biden trying to get back into the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, which Trump pulled the U.S. out of. But as Secretary of State designate Tony Blinken said during his confirmation hearing a week ago today, Monday, he said we're gonna compete with China and with Iran. We want to get back in the agreement, but only if Iran first returns to compliance, which it may find very difficult to do. Finally, on Turkey, which I know we'll get to. We all know that President Trump and President Erdogan had a positive personal relationship. Trump really admired Erdogan and liked him, just genuinely liked him. And Biden will be different. As I say, he won't personalize the relationship, but we all remember the damaging comments that then candidate Joe Biden made at the end of last year, talking about the need for there to be a new leader in Turkey, albeit via democratic processes.